Comics Recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a comic called Fly. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Eddie's a middle-aged man living by himself. Eddie was on his way to his apartment when suddenly a floating woman appeared before him. This woman's name is Daniel, and she's bad news for Eddie. Not only is she there to hurt him, but she's his ex-wife. Where is it, Eddie? Daniel keeps repeating the same question while simultaneously threatening and beating Eddie to a pulp. Daniel picks up Eddie and carries him to the sky, busting through the roof. Daniel throws Eddie inside a building and threatens him that if he does not talk the next time, death will be the least of his problems. Both Eddie and Daniel have known each other for a long time. Back when they were still studying, they met and became romantic with each other. Daniel had a troubled life back then because of some maltreatment she got from her father, while Eddie, being the guy that comforted her, made Daniel fall for him, thus starting their romantic relationship. Eddie had a friend named Francis. Francis was the type to get bullied a lot in the past, and since Eddie helped him avoid his bullies, they became buddies. One day, Francis decided to invite Eddie to his house to thank him for everything. While hanging out, Francis decided to show Eddie a medicine. It was a medicine he's only shown to Eddie, and no one else must know about it. Francis took out a syringe, shows it to Eddie, and said it's called Fly. It has the power to transform humans and grant them the ability to fly. Eddie did not believe him at first, but Francis injected it into himself and surprisingly floated in the air while saying, "So Eddie, you wanna get high?" Eddie, being so curious, decided to try Fly on himself. After injecting it, both of them were flying through the sky. Eddie decided to call Daniel that night. During their conversation, their call got disrupted. Eddie could hear arguing in the background, and the call suddenly ended. Eddie had a bad feeling about what had just happened. He rushed to Daniel's house, flying through the streets. Upon reaching her house, Eddie peeks through her second-floor window. Eddie shockingly saw that her father had just violated Danielle. In a pit of rage, Eddie lured Daniel's father to the front door by knocking on it. When Daniel's father opened the door, Eddie grabbed him, flew him high in the air, and let go of him. Immediately after killing Daniel's father, Eddie went to Francis's house. Annoyed, Francis answers the door, finding a frantic and nervous Eddie on his doorstep. The confused Francis asked him what happened, and Eddie explained everything to him. Francis tried to defuse the situation, saying, "You didn't kill him. What killed him was the fall and not you." Francis repeated this line to Eddie until he calmed down a bit. Due to the two's noise, Francis's father, Michael, suddenly appeared. With Francis and Eddie not telling him what was going on, this prompted Michael to ask Eddie to go home, which Eddie did. With Eddie gone, Michael turned his eyes to Francis. "Follow me, son," said Michael. Michael led Francis into their study and showed him a hidden room filled with apparatuses for making Fly. "This, my son, is your legacy," said Michael. While somewhere in Coffs Harbour, Australia, a flying man in a black jacket completely obliterates a cargo ship, killing everybody on board and leaving no survivor. After a couple of days, Michael heard the phone ring. He answered the phone and was shocked since his friend was frantically speaking, telling him to get out of the house. The guy in the black jacket suddenly appeared, which caused Michael to run in a panic, but he was caught. The guy in the black jacket lifted Michael by the collar and set the house ablaze using fire coming out of his hands. The guy in the black jacket told Michael that his cartel members were dead, including his wife. In a pit of sorrow, Michael mourns for his wife, telling him that she was innocent. "And my daughter wasn't? She was innocent when she took it, and she was innocent when the effect wore off, and she fell to her death," said the man in the black jacket. After saying that, he completely disintegrated Michael by using his own hands. The whole house was now on fire. At this moment, Francis arrived back home from school. A mixture of shock and fear engulfed Francis as he stares at the large fire consuming his house. The scene of firefighters desperately trying to put out the fire and the chaos surrounding it left Francis dead in his tracks. On top of the fire, Francis noticed a man hovering over it, holding a human spine in his hands. Fueled by rage and vengeance, Francis flew to the man and cracked him straight in the chin. Unsurprisingly, the punch did not affect the man. He punched Francis straight in the face, which sent him tumbling down directly to the ground, bleeding. Francis was lying on the ground, half conscious. The guy in the black jacket approached Francis, saying he would not kill him because it would be giving him the easy way out, and then left. Eddie arrived on the scene and helped Francis get to the paramedics. When the dust settled, Francis was left without a home, which forced him to stay with Eddie in his house. Back to the present, after being beaten by his ex-wife, the battered Eddie miraculously found his way to Kaiser Plaza to see Francis. When Eddie was at Francis's pad, Francis quickly took Eddie and placed him on his sofa. Francis took a vial from his supplies and gave it to Eddie. After a while, Eddie's bruises and injuries were all gone. After recovering from his injuries, Eddie told Francis what had happened. Francis handed him a buttload of cash. Francis wanted Eddie to use that money to get out of the country and start anew, to be away from Daniel. Eddie refuses, thinking Daniel will still find him anyways no matter where he goes. Francis then tells Eddie there's another way to solve his problems. He hands Eddie a syringe. Francis explains that this syringe, when injected, permanently negates the effects of fly, and that it's one of its kind. So Eddie has one shot of injecting Daniel with it. Eddie said his goodbyes to Francis and was on his way. After Eddie left, Francis went to a secret room. Inside this room was a lab with scientists working on something only Francis knows. Francis stepped into a private space where a lot of monitors surrounded him. All the monitors were showing the face of the guy in the black jacket. "It won't be long now," said Francis. Meanwhile, while Eddie was making his way out of Kaiser Plaza, he got a call from his current girlfriend Mary, asking him where he was and what happened to his apartment. Eddie drastically told Mary to get out of there right now, no questions asked. Confused, Mary was hesitant but did what Eddie told her. Eddie and Mary met a couple of years ago. While visiting a local restaurant, Mary noticed a man with a gloomy look sitting all by himself. On a hunch, Mary decided to sit in this man's booth and talk to him. Mary introduced herself and told Eddie she runs a shelter. She suggested that Eddie visit that shelter sometime. Eddie turned down her offer and let Mary know he was not interested. Before leaving, Mary slipped a calling card under Eddie's hand in case he changed his mind. Reluctantly, after thinking about it for a couple of days, Eddie took Mary up on her offer and he went to the shelter. Eddie saw Mary inside the shelter serving food to people. Eating took his share of the food, then sat and ate at a table. Mary soon after joined him, and the two immediately hit it off. They started sharing their experiences, jokes, and all around. Both had a good time talking to each other. Eddie was surprised by how joyful and accepting Mary was, which made him comfortable with her. This eventually led to the two being romantic with each other. Back to the present, Mary was on her way to exit Eddie's apartment. Unfortunately, as she came out of the building, Daniel was hovering above the apartment, waiting for her. Eddie's phone rang and the screen said Mary. Eddie answered it. To his horror, Daniel's voice was on the other line. Daniel threatened Eddie that if he didn't get to his apartment in the next 10 minutes, Mary would be in a world of hurt. Eddie arrived after 7 minutes. "Let her go!" Eddie screamed. Daniel smirked and tossed Mary out of the building through a window. Mary managed to grab onto a window pane, clinging for her life. Daniel left, leaving Mary hanging outside the window. Mary screamed for help. Right before she fell, a hand grabbed her and pulled her up. It was Eddie, right in the nick of time. But before Eddie and Mary could talk, Eddie's phone rang again. It was Daniel. "Why didn't you kill us?" Eddie asked, confused. Daniel kept saying that she won't kill Eddie until he gave her what she wants. Daniel threatened Eddie that if he doesn't give her the fly, not only will Mary's safety be on the line, but also the safety of his mother. Eddie finally caved and agreed to give her fly. They were to meet at Francis's old burnt house, where it all started. Flashback to Eddie's teenage days as Daniel packed her things and got ready to leave and go to her aunt. Daniel told Eddie that she was surprised that she had not seen her father for quite a while now, which forced her to go to her aunt since she doesn't have a guardian anymore. Eddie acted as if he knew nothing, so Daniel brushed it off and thought of it as her father finally leaving her. They didn't want to leave each other as they found comfort and peace within their relationship. Daniel wished to confess to Eddie that her father was violating her, but Eddie cut her off and invited her to go somewhere. But he first had to make sure that Francis was asleep. Eddie tiptoed through the hallway and checked Francis's room to see if he was sleeping. When the coast was clear, they made their way to Francis's burnt house. When they arrived, Eddie went inside the house and grabbed a bottle of fly. Daniel was puzzled about what that could be. Eddie injected the fly on himself, and he floated. Daniel was utterly surprised and scared, but eventually, Eddie calmed her down, and he gave her a shot of fly as well. In minutes, both of them were flying through the sky. They were ecstatic and happy as can be. While flying, both of them hugged each other. Then they kissed, and eventually, they were making love up in the skies. It was a surreal moment, but unbeknownst to them, Francis was awake and he saw everything. Back to the present as Eddie arrived at Francis's old house first, then followed Daniel. Eddie tries to convince Daniel that it's not too late to turn back. Daniel shrugged it off. She was too deep and too addicted to Fly at this point. Eddie hands it over. Daniel grabs it and looks at it in total ecstasy. Daniel injects Fly in her arm, much to her pleasure. But surprisingly, after a few seconds, the pleasure turned into despair. Daniel suddenly felt a rush of immense pain in her arm, which scattered all across her body. "What is this? It hurts!" Daniel said while in agony. Eddie staggered. He was surprised as well. "It was supposed to only take away your powers. I don't know what's happening," said Eddie. While struggling through the pain, a bright light appeared from Daniel's body and she fell to the ground. Eddie lifted Daniel's head to the ground. "I'm sorry, Eddie. I never wanted to hurt you," said Daniel. Eddie was in tears and was totally surprised by the sudden turn of events. In her final breath, Daniel mutters her final words. "I love you, Eddie. I always will." Daniel passed away in Eddie's arms, leaving him in tears and despair.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.